This comic book character, Priya, has been used before to great effect. So she's been brought back and reimagined for a younger audience by the filmmaker Ram Devneni, sponsored by the U.S. Embassy with a grant from Delhi. And she is India's first female comic superhero. And now she rides a tiger. She wears a mask, not the conventional superhero mask, but the COVID-19, anti-COVID-19 mask that we're all familiar with. And she comes in, the main character is a young child called Meena, and her mother's a nurse, and I managed to get hold of the director and the writer who's in Delhi, Shubhra Prakash. She's the writer, and the director, Ram, is in New York. Shubhra's been in lockdown, Ram's been in lockdown. So it's been a remote team. They've been working virtually with Mumbai as well. And they spoke about how they've put the whole thing together.
Priya's mask was inspired by my 3-year-old niece, Soumya. At the height of the pandemic, she was taken out of school, and after several weeks of being alone at home, she started crying. When my sister asked her, "Why are you crying?" she said, "I have no one to share my feelings with." When I heard that, I knew that was the core value of the story.
Priya is the superhero. She helps a child make sense of this world as it stands at the beginning of the pandemic. Meena is the little girl. She misses her mom. She wishes she could spend more time with her mom, but her mother has to be at work. She's an essential worker. She's a nurse. Priya shows Meena how, by being strong herself, she can become a source of strength for her mother.
With this edition, we had to soften Priya and make the story much more approachable because our audience were children. And making a short animated film really helped because we were able to utilize the talents of such icons in Bollywood and Hollywood, such as Vidya Balan, Rosanna Arquette, and recently Linda Carter, who played Wonder Woman in the 1970s, started promoting the project on social media.
And what kind of misinformation has there been around the whole COVID issue in the subcontinent, though, Rani?
Well, people have been saying things like COVID-19 is spread by the poor, it's spread by ethnic minorities, and these are the kind of solutions you can have if you sip warm water, if you don't eat meat and poultry, and if you don't have homeopathic medicines, then you'll get better. And there's, of course, they say, they've been anti-mask, anti-social distancing, and even key workers, frontline key workers, have been criticized for saying that, they could spread the virus. All bunkum, of course, but, amongst the uneducated masses, rumors and conspiracy theories can spread like wildfire. So this has been to counteract that, and it's really going down very well. So much so that famous people have endorsed it and lent their voices, like a really, really famous Hindi actress from Bollywood called Vidya Balan has voiced the tiger, and for the American version, Rosanna Arquette has been the tiger as well. So these sort of this mythical character has had famous people voice her. So and schools are clamoring for it as well. So in that clip you just heard, we heard how the director had been told that his niece was feeling very lonely, and that's why she confided in her mother that she couldn't express her feelings. And I think this is touching on perhaps one of the untold stories of COVID-19, that children, in amongst the rest of us all, have been feeling uncertain and lonely, and how many of them have been allowed to, or given a space to say how they're feeling. The writer herself was stuck on a balcony. That was her only window to the world in the conurbation of Delhi, which is very, very built up where she is. And so the first scene that we're just going to hear clips from now has this child situated on a balcony expressing her feelings as if her mother was there. Her mother's a nurse. And then the lead character, Priya, comes flying down on a tiger. The tiger asks the child, well, you'll hear, how she's feeling, and then invites her on a tour of the city on the tiger's back. And they actually see the mother in the hospital, and then, hear the claps as the mother walks back to her house, and then the tiger speaks at the end. So that's what we'll hear now.
I wish we could go back in time, Ma. We used to go to the park together and play, but now I barely see you.
Why are you sad, Meena?
I miss my friends. I have no one to tell my feelings to.
Sometimes we have to be strong, so those who love us can also be strong.
That's my Ma. She works as a nurse here.
Your Ma has sacrificed her time with you to take care of those who need help because of the virus. I am sure she misses you too, Meena. But right now, she is the hope these patients need.
Priya, we need to stand together and bring about the change we want to see.
That's how we can beat the virus.
Continue to wear a mask for your safety and mine.
So those were cartoon characters, cartoon superheroes, as it were, Rani. What about the real-life action women, I should say? Because you've got a story about Kung Fu nuns.
Kung Fu nuns. I've spent the last 5 years or so filming up in the Himalayan Tibet, in the Himalayas, and the sight of maroon-robed, shaved-headed nuns is very common, and even more common are the monks, of course, all dressed in maroon too. And for a long time, it isn't really much spoken of, but Tibetan nuns not have the same status as Tibetan monks, and they were confined to doing the cooking and the cleaning, and as for exercise, it was really out of the question. About 10 years ago, there was an enlightened leader who encouraged them to learn Kung Fu, so that's why they're called the Kung Fu nuns. And this is a new generation of woman who's breaking the old taboo and stereotypes. They're kind of taking their Tibetan meditation practice off the cushion and out into the real world, where they've received lots of criticism. But the ones I'm talking about are a sect in Nepal, just up by the border with India. And they've been carrying around sacks of lentils and toiletries and face masks and rice to very, very remote villages on the Nepalese-Indian border, where there's no TV, no internet, and people haven't even heard of COVID-19, Dotun. So when they get it, they think it's just a cold, and they've got no idea about social distancing or hand washing or masks or anything. So these nuns have been going around to teach them and educate them and take them vital supplies. And in fact, in the village where the nuns come from, Lahore, everybody's had COVID. Everybody, and some of them are from the nuns' own families. And so the nuns have been caring for them, and they say they do get scared, but their fear isn't stopping them. And saving lives makes them feel successful and happy and encourages them to do more. So they've been going around to these Tibetan slightly populated areas and helping as many people as they can. Lots of people have lost their jobs up there because they're rural workers. Schools have been shut, and there's no laptops, no internet. So children up there are missing a whole year of education. So the nuns are doing vital work in teaching and education and caring for, teaching people about basic health hygiene.
I have to ask because that's my generation of kung fu devotees. On behalf of them, is the martial arts for exercise solely, or do they perform a sort of a defensive role as well?
That's a good question, Dotun. Well, I think it's mainly for exercise, but I don't think that they would hesitate if needs be. Of course, this is where Tibetan Buddhism is essentially pacifist and preaches non-violence. But I don't think they would hesitate to deploy their martial arts skills should the need arise. But I think they're more of a ministering capacity, and they certainly look very impressive when they're doing their displays.
In London over the past week, we've seen demonstrations outside the Indian embassy, demonstrations in support of farm protest in India. What's it all about?
Yeah, these farmers in India, incidentally in the UK, we get a lot of spices from these farmers in India. They play a very important role over there because in the northern state of Punjab, that's known as the breadbasket of India because it's the green belt. It's the most fertile area. And these farmers for decades have been protected by various laws fixing prices so they can get on with their job and India can export. Now, Modi, Prime Minister Modi in India, fairly similar to one other world leader that perhaps we won't mention here. He's not part of this report, but you may draw the similarities as you wish. Has been focusing more on the economy during this period of COVID-19 and has looked for the opportunity in the pandemic. Now, India and China have always had a rivalry, and in many respects, and with a global backlash against China that's arisen over the last year or so, India wants to take that title of being factory of the world and wants to actually seize the crown of global manufacturing from China. So it has suddenly deregulated the whole agricultural sector and is inviting in big corporations. So the farmers, of course, are going to be hit badly because with a free market situation in the north, they'll be hit and they're not protected. So they have gone on strike, and this has really packed a punch to the Modi government because they just weren't expecting it. They didn't expect people to come out in mass strikes and rallies during this pandemic period because they've imposed over in India the world's strictest lockdown, only 4 hours notice. And now there are thousands of farmers from the Punjab who've been camping out on the highways into Delhi, the capital, and around the borders. And the police over there have been very, very heavy-handed. Now, a lot of the Indians in the UK their ancestors, the first generations and the first generation's parents, come from the state of Punjab. So there's a very, very close link. The grandchildren, great-grandchildren who are here now, they have strong links to the Punjab, and they feel quite bad about this whole thing. So they have been protesting and all over the place, not just in the UK, but in the US as well. And in fact, it's gotten as far as British Parliament. And just last week, Punjabi MP Manjeet Singh Desi raised the issue of water cannon and tear gas and brute force being used against the farmers who were just protesting peacefully. And he asked Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister, about British government's position on the months-long demonstration. And of course, the British Prime Minister has many things on his mind and can't expect it to be always completely clued up as to the detail of international issues. And he responded to the MP saying, our view is that as the Right Honourable was this effect, is that, of course, we've got serious concerns about what is happening between India and Pakistan, but these are preeminently matters between the two governments to settle, and I know he appreciates this point. Now, this statement led to a huge kind of amount of tweets ridiculing and questioning what the Prime Minister's response, because Pakistan has nothing to do with this issue at all, and it was all an internal Indian matter. So, the British Prime Minister has many things on his mind, doesn't he, Dotun?
Well, he's apparently going an extra mile at the moment. So, is Bhutan really the happiest country in the world?
Well, we've spoken about Bhutan together in past months, and it does have this reputation, doesn't it? And the Oscar submissions for 2021 have just been announced by Screen Daily, and a young filmmaker, Pawu Choining Dorji, has decided to kind of challenge this notion, because his finding as a Bhutanese resident is that actually what's happening is that a lot of youngsters are turning their back on this idyllic rural kingdom and heading to the bright lights of the big cities. So he wanted to explore this theory and has made a lovely, charming film called A Yak in the Classroom. The yaks are the kind of four-legged animals which are the staple of the Himalayan territories, and Bhutan being the last Himalayan kingdom in the north of India. And he decided that he would have a teacher come up from the big city and do his last year of training fictionally in this film to the world's most remote school set up high in the mountains. And of course, it's not only high; it's very cold up there. I've travelled in those areas, and boy, it's very primitive. And so there's no electricity, and the teacher wants to do a runner. He really finds it quite difficult to manage over there. No electricity, no heating, no light. But the children ask him to stay, and he does. And the film really explores this journey of how he settles in and how he teaches outdoors with a yak in the classroom. And it was interesting that the filmmaker himself was saying that just to make a film up there where the amenities are so few was challenging. He himself wasn't given access to a proper sort of westernized shower for about 2 months, so he had to find alternative ways of washing himself, which we do up there. And the actors that he chose from the village had never seen a film. They'd never even seen a camera. So he got real villagers to play themselves. And then, of course, the technical demands of filmmaking, Dotun, having worked in film and radio yourself, every day when we've done lots of footage, when we've shot, we, as filmmakers, like to see what we call dailies. We need to see the footage to see how it's going, so we can amend for the next day. But he wasn't able to do that because he was using solar-powered batteries, so he had to be really, really careful with the energy. So he'd only see what we call the dailies, the daily footage, about a month later. But he said it was really fascinating, and the whole experience of darkness and shadow really made him appreciate the light, and we'll see how it does in next year's Oscars.